It has been said that average people want you to stay average. Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast, the podcast designed to challenge you to break the mold that average has on the world. Each episode offers insights directly from those who choose to break average every day. Now, for the latest insights, here are your hosts, Paul Gustafson and Rick Morris.
Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast. Today, it's episode number 8 of season number 3. My name is Paul Gustafson, and joining me once again, Rick Morris. Hey, Rick, how are you?
Hey, buddy. How you doing? Let's go, baby. I'm ready for this conversation. Let's go.
I know, man. This has been so much fun. We've been going through books to lead, and our focus is on the topic of effective leadership. So we're having a lot of fun, aren't we?
We are. And I've enjoyed these conversations, man. It gets I said it, I think in our first podcast this season, like I missed hanging out with you on every other Sunday as we do this and really kind of get my brain set up for the coming week.
Yeah, it certainly helps me too. And here's what's fun, right? Any of us can read a book by ourselves and we can be encouraged and inspired and motivated. Sure, that happens. But there's something magical when we start to kick around books together. And this is what's been so much fun. This will be our 6th book that I think we're doing here so far in this series. And it's so much fun just to kind of kick the books around. So let's dive into this week's book to lead. Why don't you share with everybody what that book is? I think they may have heard of this.
I think so. But if we're going to go with books that have stood the test of times, what we're saying, not relatively new. I think it was 2 years and beyond is what we were looking at. And things also, we wanted to challenge books that we probably have read in the past, but haven't picked up and read again. And we really are pushing that because a lot of times as I read through it, and as it happened to me again with this book, is it's hitting me in a different stage of my career. So what I needed to get from the book, I got from the book 15 years ago when I read it the first time. I got something different from the book this time. And I think that's important. Like we tend to want to read the latest book. And sometimes it's really, really powerful to go back and read something you've already read. And to that end, we chose The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Dr. Covey. By the way, side note on that, I had an opportunity to meet and work with him, but it started off really awkwardly as I made a joke that he didn't think was as funny as I did. But he was the beginning keynote at this huge conference, and I happened to have the second slot right behind him before all the breakouts. And I just said, "Thank you, Dr. Covey, for agreeing to open for me," which I thought was really funny. But he did not think it was as funny. So we had a nice exchange in the green room after that. And he was wonderfully sweet. But I started my career
that's
off
a good
with
story.
not so good.
Like you just want to just duck your head and walk like, oops.
A lot of times just, the things hit my brain and they just come right out of my mouth. And I thought I was chuckling, but I could see by his expression. Yeah,
it is funny.
Yeah.
Well, we get to honor him today, right? Even though he's passed and his legacy.
Will. But of course, this is one of those staples in those, top 3, top 4 books that you should read. How to Win Friends and Influence People, 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, Think and Grow Rich, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is a core if you really want to grow, and if you really want to be the leader that you're wanting to be. This is one of those core books, Paul.
Yeah, it's such a core book, and we want to encourage you guys first and foremost. We're going to try to put as much resources and just information for you as we can on our Breaking Average website, so go check that out. But we also want to, encourage you to go, even though Dr. Covey's passed, I think we can still honor him. We can honor him by buying. I mean, he's got some great resources on this book and other books. So go check them out. Just go to Steven Covey. Just Google Steven Covey. You'll find there's a lot of good stuff out there. But Franklin Institute is the organization, and you definitely want to check that out. So, Rick, why did you pick this book?
Well, of course, it's one of the core tenets. I mean, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People continues to be, a bestseller, right? And it's for the simple reason that it ignores trends and pop psychology, and focuses on timeless principles of fairness, integrity, honesty, and human dignity, right? And it's by far one of the best books that's ever been written. And I got drawn to it because I'm a very action-oriented person. When we were doing high performing habits a couple of podcasts ago, again, it comes back to what is it that you can do? Not exactly who I am all the time, but what is it that I can do? What are some core habits that I can develop in order to really attain that success? And I mean, this book has been out there, 25 years now?
Yeah, it's been a while,
And millions of people have had an opportunity to transform their lives across all age groups, professions. It's an easy read, for that part. And of course, you guys can go to franklincovey.com/ the -7-habits and see, but there's all kinds of resources behind it. But I chose the book because it was one of the first books that I ever read when I was really ready to take the next step in my career.
Yeah. And so such a great point that you made earlier. This may be a book that you read a long time ago, folks, but this is a book worth revisiting. I try to revisit it once a year, and it's that impactful for me. And it's amazing, Rick, how much, even though I read it and I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Or I see something that I didn't see before. It's kind of like the Bible for me. Sometimes I open up the Bible, I've read a passage 1,000 times, but it's that next time, because maybe of how it was presented, I see something new in it. And so, yeah, there's something powerful out of that. And we will put that same link, Rick shared the link, franklincovey.com. And I will share the link on our Breaking Average website too, just to make it easy for you guys. So let's dive into what are some of the major elements to this thing? Let's dive into some of those compelling components of the book that you discovered.
Well, and I want to share a more personal story here too on that is so we were at IMC a few weeks ago, you and I, Paul, and there was a great friend of mine there by the name of Tracy Duez. And if you can find more about Tracy, you can go to breakfreeconsulting.com and take this assessment that I did, which deals with axiogenics. And axiogenics is your value-based decision making, and it really kind of helps you understand how you view the world. Well, that was very impactful for me. And so to tie this into reading a book again, so as I sat down to read it again, to do our study for this podcast, one of the big ideas that Steven had said, and it hit me square again, Paul, is we see the world not as it is, but as we are conditioned to, quote, see it. And the breakthrough I had at IMC, and you and I were even discussing this a little bit on pre-show, is what happens to me more than anything is that I have a vision of how something's going to go. And I create that in my brain. And then when it doesn't live up to this vision, because there's no possible way, because other people are involved, there's no possible way it's going to go how I had planned it in my brain. But I used to take that as a negative context versus now I'm having to train myself, and it takes time and I'm working at it. But I have to train myself to go, oh, I wasn't seeing the world the way everybody else was or as it is. I was seeing it as the way I made it up in my brain. And then I'm doing the comparisons of what happened based on what I made up, not what really happened, and how many cycles of negativity that churns for me. So we see the world not as it is, but as we are conditioned to see it. I think that was just so telling for me in this book.
Yeah. So it's funny you mentioned that, because those are in my notes too, right? I was looking at this and like, before I even get into the components, this opening statement, all people see the world not as it is, but as they are, that was like, whoa, and he's saying our character is basically composed of our habits, and 7 effective habits for us to lead. Habit is the intersection of knowledge, skill, and desire. That's what a habit is. I love that definition. The intersection of knowledge, skill, and desire. And that point, people act based on how they see the world rather than how the world actually is. Guys, if we get our habits right, we can see the world in a whole new way. And we really need to. So anyway, love that point that you made.
The key word to that though, Paul, was desire. So we referenced my weight loss in the last podcast, probably a couple more of them as well. I've always had the knowledge, always had the skill. But somebody had asked me the other day, and I just, I'm looking back at every picture I have on Facebook, going back to, 2007 or 6, whenever I joined, I'm way overweight. And I just conditioned myself that I was just always going to be a big guy. I was just always going to be that person. That was how I saw the world. And then all of a sudden I developed a desire to do that. So I always had the knowledge, always the skill, but that third word in that intersection of that is desire. True. You have to have the desire. Otherwise everything else will fail.
Yeah. That's great. That is great. And I love your story, the weight loss story. Go back, if you hadn't, go watch that or listen to that podcast that we did on the Vision Driven Leader. And Rick tells the story.
Heck, go back to season 1 and just see how big I was. Even season 2. But let's jump in. Let's go ahead and say the 7 habits, and then we can unpack other things. But let's just be clear.
Let's get in it, right? These are the major compelling components of the book. It's all 7 in these habits. So I'll let you start, man.
So number 1, be proactive.
Yeah.
Always be proactive. Number 2, I think this is something that somebody has quoted to you before. And if you didn't know it came from this book, but begin with the end in mind.
Yeah.
Begin with the end in mind. But first things first. Number 4 is think win-win. And again, that is a big one for a lot of people because they're thinking about, how do I win? But I see a lot of people do a lot of business by them winning by making the other people fail. In fact, almost every vendor client relationship starts that way, is, all right, let's do a win-win. And actually I'm going to dovetail now. Whoops. Sorry, this happens.
That's all right.
One of the ways that I teach people to negotiate, me being a vendor for so long, I always get asked, how much is it going to cost? How long is it going to take? And you do that. And the first thing they do is try to hit you on cost, right? My greatest project I ever ran by far, K-Force. And we were doing something that had never been done before, which is being able to accurately predict resource utilization based on human drug trial protocol information. So you have a bunch of things that might happen. How many people do you need to go execute against that plan, right? That is a big math problem that we had to solve. When I went to them and they tried to hit me on cost, I was like, look, I'll take less cost, but when my team delivers what I know we can deliver on time, you're going to pay what we originally charged. They came back and said, no, I'll tell you what, you deliver this in the time frame you say you can, we'll pay you more. And then if it's 2 months later, we'll pay you what you said. And if it's 2 months later, then you're going to take this lower rate. And what they did is they made it a win-win contract. Mm-hmm. And I've never had a more team-centric, solution-focused project in my entire life, because we both had mutual benefit and interests to solve the problem in a cost-effective way in a time frame that was just unheard of. But because it was win-win. And so I've experienced that firsthand. Number 5 is seek first to understand, then be understood. That is a golden rule. Number 6 was synergize. And number 7 is what we're doing right here on this podcast, buddy, sharpening the saw.
Yeah, I love these 7. Yeah, these are so good. And if you guys didn't get it, we'll try to put it out there on the webpage, breakingaverage.com, of course. But I love that first one. Be proactive, not reactive, right? Is really what he's talking about. Be proactive. Very important. I love this idea beginning with the end in mind. It ties actually, Rick, doesn't it, to our vision discussion last week?
Yes.
Yeah. First things first is really the moving forward. But then he gets into this interdependence thing on that win-win thing that you talked about. I was telling you in the pre-show, and I'll do this really quick for everybody. I was watching a 30 for 30, right? Rick, you've seen some 30s for 30s. They're really great. Powerful, right? And this one was on the 1983 NFL draft. And there was a win-win strategy that was set up weeks before the draft even started, with John Elway and the Colts and John Elway's lawyer and attorney, agent that was helping him. It was all set up, and then the owner of the Colts kind of steps in and changes it all up, and he doesn't think win-win. And so the GM for the Colts, I mean, really just he he reacted probably not in a good way. So the very first second of the draft, he just drafts Elway. The plan was to trade that pick. They knew that Elway didn't want to play for the Colts, and they created an awesome win-win strategy so that the Colts were going to get a bunch of other picks from another team who needed Elway, and everybody was going to win out. And it didn't happen that way at all. And eventually, obviously, Elway gets traded to the Broncos, but the Colts didn't get much out of that deal. It wasn't a win-win strategy. It was a win for Denver, but not for the Colts. So interesting story. Watch that if you get a chance. But I love the seek first to understand and to be understood. That has changed. That's changed my game, right? It's all about empathy. We can get into that. So these are great. These 7 habits are fantastic. So let's talk about 3 big takeaways that you had from this book, Rick. Share with us maybe your first takeaway.
Yeah, first takeaway that I really highlighted in the book, and I think it bears to say here is leadership is communicating others' worth and potential so clearly that they're inspired to see it themselves. That just became a
say that one more time. I think that's so good. I don't want people to miss it because they're probably trying to rewind the tape and they were trying to write this down. So say it one more time.
So leadership is communicating others' worth and potential so clearly that they are inspired to see it in themselves. That's it.
Yeah.
When we say leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less, this is the and statement. And the reason that's true is because they believe in themselves. If you influence them the right way to see their own worth and their own potential, then they can be inspired to see it in themselves. And that's what a leader does.
I love that. That's good. That's good. My first takeaway out of this book is that our behavior is a function of our decisions, not our conditions. This is about being proactive, right? He says that proactive people, they carry their own weather with them. I love that. They're value driven. They've got their values. And because they're clear on their values, they can, instead of being reactive, they're proactive. And our behavior is a function of our decisions, not our conditions. What's your second takeaway?
Well, but I want to dovetail on that for a second, because people carry their own weather with them.
Yes.
Isn't that true?
Yeah.
The negative Nellies that are out there, and then you have the sunshine Sallies, right? I mean, it's a choice, and you hear that it's a choice, but you bring the weather with you. People are always, I don't know why this happened to me. Well, what did you do to cause it? You know what I mean? Like that we really have to kind of dive into that, which dovetails into it. If you're trying to figure out what kind of weather you're bringing, back to what we said, originally, we have mini maps in our heads, which can be divided into 2 main categories, right? Maps of the way things are, or the realities,
yes,
and maps of the way they should be, or values.
Yes.
So when you're faced with a struggle personally, or you're trying to figure out why something happened, or you're in those moments, and I embrace those moments. We all have them. When I have down days, I embrace them, but I try to sit there and go, okay, am I feeling this way because that's the way it is? Or is it because I'm measuring something against the way I think it should be?
Yeah.
And it's a really tough internal conversation to have. Right.
Yeah, and those values matter. I mean, that's where the clarity comes, right?
And it comes back to, something my mom used to say all the time when I was younger, and it never snapped in until I was older. But I used to say, oh, so-and-so makes me so mad. My mom would go, nobody can make you mad. It's your choice to be mad. They can't make you mad.
Yeah.
You can see it, interpret it, and decide to be angry about it, but they can't make you that way. And that's a really hard thing to come to terms with, especially, I think I was like 9 the first time I heard that. But the point, it's the same thing though. It's what's the map of the way things are in their realities versus, am I measuring that against the values of what I think it should be?
Yeah. That's
right.
Good.
It's a huge difference.
I like that. Cool. So yeah, what was the other takeaway that I know you and I had a bunch in here, but what's the next one?
The other one is to try to change outward attitudes and behaviors do very little good in the long run if we fail to examine the basic paradigms from which those attitudes and behaviors flow. So we can't change a behavior if we don't know why that attitude or behavior exists in the first place.
Yeah, he makes a Viktor Frankl quote in here that's pretty powerful. There are three central values in life: the experiential, or that which happens to us; the creative, or that which brings that which we bring into existence, right? The creative. We are all creative. And number three, the attitudinal, right? Our response to difficult circumstances. So that attitude really matters. That's Viktor Frankl. Yeah, that's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. It's interesting, as I've really been diving into mindset and stuff. Mel Robbins is another fantastic coach out there, and she talks about the high five challenge. But she talks about, even when you're like negative, that that you physically do this, and there's research behind it, but that you actually place your hand on your heart and you say, "I'm okay, I'm safe, I'm loved," and you actually say it, because it actually will activate the prefrontal cortex, where these feelings and things of action actually reside. But when you're starting to find yourself in that negative spiral, to do that, the point of that is and I think it's another quote in the book too, where private victories precede public victories.
Wow.
And so your private victory of being able to center yourself, then determine what mental map you're in, then determine your attitude, as you were just saying, the attitudinal choice there, of how I'm going to go about that. Those are all private victories, which then precede the public victory of getting the outcome that you desired.
Yeah, that's good. That whole Mel Robbins thing. We need to put that. We got to share that too. So if you could send that reference to me personally, I want to make sure we're going to put that out for all our viewers there. So check us out. We're going to put a lot of good content out there on the breakingaverage.com website. My second takeaway, Rick, was this point. It's really short, but it's really practical. The benefits of the habits, right? We talked about features versus benefits last time on vision, but the habits, there's benefits of these habits, and they're so powerful. 4 of them: increased confidence; 2, greater sense of identity, integrity, control, and directedness; and 3, a sense of exhilaration and peace; and 4, improved relationships. Those are the 4 benefits of the habits, these 7 habits.
For sure.
All right, let's get into the third takeaway. What's your third one?
It talks about good affirmations. It is true that your subconscious can't determine a real fact from a fake fact. It just can't. It's just a processor. It's right. A computer. It just intakes the data that's thrown to it. And so affirmations are very, very powerful, and a lot of people feel silly about them. But a good affirmation, he says, has 5 basic ingredients, right? It's personal.
Yep.
It's positive. It's present tense. It's visual, and it's emotional. And I think a lot of people forget the emotional side.
Yeah,
it's the emotional reaction to create the emotion that you're trying to go after. So that was another takeaway for me, is around the affirmations.
I want to pull on that emotional bit, because this was my third takeaway. It was on that emotional bank account. Wasn't that powerful?
Yeah.
Each of us have access to an emotional bank account, or he calls it an EBA. And an EBA is a metaphor that describes the amount of trust that's been built up in a relationship. It's the feeding and the feeling of safeness that you have with one another as a human being, right? So the EBAs, we got EBA. I have an EBA with you.
Yeah.
And we have EBAs with other folks, and where is that balance? All right. When the EBA balance is high, so is the resulting level of trust. When the balance is low, trust plummets and relationships suffer. What are the deposits that we can make? So here are some deposits that I spent some time kind of thinking through these. So these are deposits that we can make into our EBA. This is how and then how do we build up a reserve? A couple ideas. 1, understanding the individuals, right? Seek first to understanding them and being empathetic, attending to the little things, keeping commitments, clarifying expectations. So important. One that I struggle with sometimes. Clarifying expectations, showing personal integrity, absolutely critical, right? And then the other one that I wrote down here is apologizing sincerely when you make a withdrawal. Yeah, sometimes say, hey, look, I'm sorry, I kind of get goofed up. So when, we have to think about what happens when our account gets too low, our EBA balance gets too low. That can happen. And we've seen that happen many times. So the key is build up that EBA. So
a quote I use with my kids a lot is every interaction is a transaction and somebody's buying. And that means like every time you have an interaction with somebody, you're making that debit or credit. And so how do you ensure that you're putting debits into their account, right? that you're not extending your credit to the point of the fact that you're overdrawn and they got to close the account, right? Yeah. Essentially what it comes down to. But when you think of it that way, every interaction is a transaction and people are either buying what you're saying or not.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah. That's so good, man. I'm lots of nuggets here. I'm doing notes capturing as Rick shares. So this is good. So Rick, I can't believe it. We're already getting close to the end on this podcast. And we got so many great books lined up beyond this one, but this is a good one, isn't it?
I love it. I love it. It's a classic. And again, we could probably do a whole season just on this book, but let's dive into Tip and Challenge, partner. Why don't you go ahead and go for it?
Yeah, definitely. But again, we want to thank Steven Covey for writing this phenomenal book. It's changed all of us, right? And hopefully we love to hear your story in terms of how this book has impacted you. So visit us at breakingaverage.com. So Tip and Challenge, Rick, I'll let you start, man. What's your tip and challenge?
So I think the tip is going to, for me, this is just something I'm doing right now, is around those mental maps to decide whether or not the issue that you're experiencing is something that is really happening, or it's happening against your vision of what you thought might occur. And this is work I'm doing right now. It was a revelation just a few weeks ago and something I'm diving into. So the thing that spoke to me in the book and the challenge is, the problems that we face are always going to be in one of three areas. So when you have an issue and you have something that's going on, you have direct control, which are problems involving your own behavior, something you caused, something you did. Maybe that's time to look at your EBA and see what's going on. There's indirect control, which is problems involving other people's behavior. Mm-hmm. So it was their choice. And then there's no control, which is problems that we can do nothing about, such as our past or situational realities. And so when I'm diving through, my challenge for you is you can do it really fast. There's times that I have to take time too. But sit down and go, is this something I'm directly in control of? Is it indirect, so it's happening to me, or just do I have no control? And things I have no control of, I don't cycle on anymore. Like once I've decided that, like it's kind of whatever happens is going to happen. There's nothing I can do about it. I can only be prepared for what the fallout may be. But then I start to say, what did I do wrong there? And it's such a powerful question. What could I have done better? I had an interaction recently where I had somebody that was kind of blasting my team, and I take personal accountability for my team. I'm the protector of the team, and I felt like they did that unfairly. But I snapped back. That was something I had direct control of, and I got to the ultimate solution of what I wanted, which is pulling the person aside and being able to build on the EBA and discuss it, why that was hurtful, why I would prefer you to come to me, why I would prefer you to look at the issue further before you announce that the sky is falling to everybody. But I did have control of my initial reaction. And that's something that I had to grow on. It's something I was like, okay, I was mad and I didn't like it. And it was a public forum. So I wanted to make sure that I was protecting my team. All of those are good thoughts. I just did it in the wrong way. So that's my challenge for you is to go through each issue that you're about to deal with, determine the control level, and that'll help you choose the attitude in which you can go about it.
I love that. Can I just speak on that for you before I get to my tip and challenge? There's a great line. We talked about it. This is the movie that won last year. Remember the Titans. Yeah. And to your point, I love this line, and it's impacted my life more this past year than it did when I first saw it in the movie. It's attitude reflects leadership, Captain. Yeah. And it's really powerful because I realized that my attitude, in whatever situation it is, right? Emotional intelligence is what you're talking about. And there have been points, Rick, I'm right with you, man, where I didn't react the way I wanted to, but I realized attitude reflects leadership. So I now I'm asking that question every time before I react. Like email is like the worst because people don't understand intent the way it should be. It should be a, one-on-one like you and I are doing right now. When we have those conversations, I can go in there and just remind myself. It's kind of an affirmation. Attitude reflect leadership. And just taking that time to think through that is really powerful. I wrote down another thought I wrote down as you were sharing, Rick, is this idea of be present and be prepared. Be present and be prepared. Like it's important for me to be present, right? In the conversations, seek first to understand, and being present with somebody is as important as being prepared. And I want both. I need to have both. So those are two thoughts I wrote down as you were sharing that inspires me. And I'm going to live out your tip and challenge. So appreciate it. I'm going to start off, Rick, with a challenge first, then I'll get into the tip. How's that? I'll flip it.
Awesome.
So the challenge is, what one thing could you do, something you aren't doing now, that if you did it on a regular basis would make a tremendous positive difference in your life? This is right out of the book. It's such a powerful challenge. It is the ultimate, right? It's why we are doing this podcast, Breaking Average. What's the one thing you could do, something you're not doing now, maybe you used to do, but if you did it on a regular basis would make a tremendous positive difference in your life and maybe the lives of somebody else. Okay. So here's a couple tips maybe to inspire you with that challenge is, he says that most people don't listen to what the intent, they don't really follow that intent to understand. Most people. What if you did, right? What if you seek first to understand before being understood? What would that look like? How would that change things? How would you be able to move forward with that challenge, right? We do a lot with reading and writing and speaking. Well, how are you doing on the listening part? How am I doing on the listening part? Which one best supports empathy? I think it's probably the listening. So we have that choice. It's right in front of us. We can do it. We can practice it. Practice that habit. That's my tip, is to practice the habit. But the challenge is identify those things that you can do that you're not doing now, that if you did it on a regular basis would make just a huge impact in your life and the lives of others. So, yep.
Paul, I've heard that many times, but I want to quote another book that you've shared with me, which is Tiny Habits.
Yeah.
And I needed that for the little connection point. So for instance, one of the things I used to say all the time is that I can't possibly work out at home. And that's true because it's very hard for me to find 30 or 45 minutes to break away from the desk or that kind of stuff. My ADD brain, something happens. I want to serve, so I want to go answer it. But he talks about a anchor point, right? In Tiny Habits and anchoring that. So if there is something that you want to do, I also, something you want to do right now that you haven't been able to do, also look at an anchor point. So one of mine now is when I finish a conference call, when I finish this podcast, I've got my weights sitting right over here and I just go, I do one set of something. So I either do, triceps, bicep curls, do 20 push-ups or whatever, but I do something at the end of every meeting. So I've anchored it to, okay, I have 9 meetings. And over that time, I'll still get 45 minutes of exercise in, but it's 3 minutes here, 4 minutes there. That's fine. The point is that became a new anchor point. So anytime I come in from the door, anytime I finish a meeting, I've got to do something. And that's how I anchored that there. So that's the other tip to go with your challenge is if you do pick something, anchor it. So if it is an affirmation, tell yourself in the mirror when you're brushing your teeth. If it is, whatever that may be, find an anchor point that says, every time I do this, I'm going to go do this, and you'll be more successful in that habit.
Love the habit stacking concept. Love it. This is so good. Rick, I can't believe it. Time's up, man, but this has been such a phenomenal call. I've really enjoyed this time with you. And we want to just invite all our listeners and viewers just to check out all our past podcasts. They're out there. Tell somebody about this current podcast. Maybe it's a book that you keep meaning to read that you haven't. And we just gave you just the high level nails on this thing. And so this is something that you want to share with somebody else. Please do that. Let us know. Comment on it. But we are excited. Once again, I'm inspired by our mission of leadership. I'm inspired by this idea of breaking average because we all have a choice to do this. Join us again next time as we continue on our series on books to lead. This has been fun. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Breaking Average podcast. If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe. All opinions and comments expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or views of any of the advertisers, producers, or platforms. This show was produced by R² Multimedia. A special thank you to Milestone Melodies for our theme music. As you continue your day, what is one action that you can apply from this podcast to your life? Tune in for our next episode as we continue to challenge everyone to break average.